to the Cedars for welcoming us back for this month's First Friday's presentation. And today we are very glad that we will be welcoming Professor Ann Zerger. And she is going to share a presentation titled Ecospheres. Ann is a professor of art at McPherson College, and we're fortunate to hear her this semester as she is retiring at the end of this semester in May. And Ann's art has been displayed around our campus, around the state of Kansas and beyond, and she has some very unique art, which I think will be incorporated into today's presentation. It's large scale and visible to the public if you know where to look. And it's been featured recently in the local newspaper, so it may be familiar to some of you. And we'll look forward to hearing from Ann in just a moment after I share a couple of other announcements with you all. The first is to thank all of you in the McPherson College community who participated in Power Day, which was our one day of giving in March. We had giving that totaled over $156,000, and we had over 300 alumni and friends participate that day. And so that was our biggest day yet, and broke all of the goals that we had set, and was also a whole lot of fun. So I know that a lot of people participating today also participated in that. So thank you for your support for Power Day. And so after all of that, thank you for your patience, Ann. We welcome Professor Ann Zerger to share today.
Hello, I'm wearing this new contraption here, so hopefully it stays on and you can hear me well. I've been here a couple other times and did some art stuff. This time I'm going to kind of do a presentation of one of my large installations, and some of you may have traveled out to see that installation. I think that was last fall. And so this time, if you've seen that, you'll get to review it on the slides and hear kind of the theory and the thought behind the artwork. Unbeknownst to some people, artists really do think a lot about what they are composing before they actually do it. A lot of times there's this myth that, you know, we just like do this and don't really think. But there is a lot of intellectual thought that usually goes into big or contemporary art. What is happening out in the art world, as is in all the disciplines, is a lot of artists are becoming very focused on some major issues that are confronting our society. And of course, probably one of the biggest ones is global warming and environmental issues. What to do with trash, the overwhelming of trash, how trash is affecting the environment, what's happening to ecosystems that are also being affected by global warming. So when I did this project for my sabbatical, which was about 2.5 years ago, and in composing what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to work in the area of environmental art. I'm very passionate as a person on the environment. I am blessed to have ownership of a prairie farm that my grandchildren, it will be the 5th generation. And about 30 years, we put over 60 acres back into native prairie, and we have been restoring the prairie for a long time. And probably, if any of you are aware of the Land Institute and some of the things around here, the prairie takes very, very long to restore. The roots, they're kind of in clumps and they spread out. So you know, I probably won't see it totally restored, but it's getting there. So that was kind of the basis where I started to think about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to work on this. And so I developed kind of a theory along with my husband, architect, who also worked on this project. And eco-art sphere, and this is my own, or our own definition of how we see art interacting and helping to preserve or work with what's happening with the environment. So I'll just read this and then we'll go into how I created it and how I picked the space. This is kind of the basis. I thought a long time on how to phrase this before we ever went into creating. So it's kind of an important concept. So our definition, and this again is our own terminology, is the eco art system. Art that celebrates the preservation of native environment by taking either urban or agricultural land permanently out of production by the use of form, shape, material, resource, earth, vegetation, found, used, and created objects. This art is to be accessible to the public and to serve as an aid in the education of the natural environment, incorporating both passive and active participation. The permanent art installation in the environment is to serve as an impediment to returning the land to a developed or agriculture use and thereby reduce the impact of global warming and to protect product and environment that is necessary for the survival of native species. So that kind of was a formation of what we were thinking about. And of course, it was only natural that we wanted to do it in our property where we have started to put native grass. And this is a picture of the area that we started looking at. And we decided that whatever we did, we wanted it to celebrate the Great Plains and the local migratory wildlife, birds, butterflies, bees, all the great things that are important to our survival. They are losing their habitat, and so the prairie is one of the prime habitats for these, and so that was kind of where we wanted to start. So this is sort of the end product, and I will go back, kind of back and forth how we did this. This is out in our prairie, and I'm going to explain why we picked what we did and all of that. But you can see that we decided to create something that would create a conversation, a visceral conversation with the viewer and the beauty and diversity of the serenity of the prairie. And so scale was definitely going to be part of it. So as we were getting ready to think about, what it was we were going to be doing, the Monarch Butterfly, there was a lot 2 years ago, and of course this has been going on for a while, and there is continually is that the Monarch Butterfly is in a real danger of becoming extinct, and it's such a fabulous migratory insect, and all that it does, and it kind of began to represent something very significant to us personally, because when my kids were little and when I was little, the monarch butterflies were just always around. I mean, they were the most common butterfly that I kind of remember. And when my kids were young, they would, we were on the flyway, and so we would have our trees used as roosting. As you guys know, the butterflies go around, and you just have your trees full of these butterflies, and the kids would have a lot of fun running around and seeing what would happen. And they also, my kids went to Mound Ridge when they were in grade school, and there was a teacher there that was participating in getting information with the monarchs, so they helped tag. But since, things have changed, the butterflies, the monarchs, have really decreased from where we see them, and we don't get that roosting, we don't get that migratory element anymore. They've either moved or, it's just not as massive. And so this seemed to be sort of what we wanted to use as our metaphor about the importance of the prairie and what it represents. And so the monarch was kind of the image that we wanted to do. One of the things that the art we wanted it to be focused on is something that interacted into the prairie, was sort of there and would move in and out of focus depending on what was happening. And those of you that have seen it, people can drive by and, they may or may not see it, just like when you drive by a prairie. People drive by and go, oh, this is so boring in Kansas, when they're driving through western Kansas, and how much they are missing and how important it is. So we also wanted it to be very much a part of the area. One of the reasons the habitat is going away for not just the butterfly, but for all the other migratory insects and birds and stuff is the loss of the plants that they depend on. And so for the monarchs, it's the nectar flowers and the milkweed. And that to the farmer and to people maintaining the ditch has always been seen as a weed. And I remember that as a child too, because my father was a wheat farmer. That's a weed, you get rid of it. And so with the continually tilling and pulling up of the prairie and overgrazing and spraying, those particular plants are dying and not around. And so K-State has a program where you can become part of something called the Monarch Waystation. So before we even started, we decided this was going to be what we wanted to do. And we created a monarch habitat in part of our prairie. And you get a sign that is out there right now, and it's called the Monarch Waystation. And anybody with land or a garden can do this. You have to plant some nectar plants, and you have to plant the milkweed. And so we worked with them, and we were certified. First of all, we had to find the spot, and this is my grandson, and he was 2.5 then, and we walked all over to figure out where this is going to work, and, I just thought this was a great picture because it's like, well, here is the spot, and so we did that. But, so we worked with, we got the grant from K-State or KU, I'm sorry, to get these milkweeds, and so there's, in those boxes, there were over 150 milkweed plants. And so we, in March, before I started my sabbatical, had volunteers, and we went around and planted these. And of course, the blue buckets are there because we needed to water them if it got too dry, because they're like any other plant. They're very tender when they're new. So this is a couple of years ago. And that's a close look. There's a lot of different milkweeds. There's just the common milkweed. There's tons of different ones. And they analyzed what was supposed to be growing the best for us. There are some milkweeds that are not good for here because they keep the butterfly around when they should be going south. So if you are thinking about doing something this, I would recommend that you really get research and get the right kind of milkweed, because you could actually harm the butterflies by preventing doing that. But anyway, the milkweeds are where they lay their eggs, and all that metamorphosis and stuff happens where the caterpillar is born on there and eats all that, and then does its whole, they move from there, and then they hang from, the caterpillar will hang from another area, and then do, there's that word, well, the cocoon, but there's another, Perpese? Chrysalis, yeah. That's what they call it, and that's where the chrysalis is. But you will see eggs, little bitty dots on these if you're lucky, and then of course you'll see some of the caterpillars. The monarch caterpillar is beautiful. It looks very kind of different. I don't have a picture of it here, but it's just gorgeous in the colors, and you can see how it's going to transform into such a great color. So once we did have to do a lot of, some landscaping, and I also planted a whole lot of nectar plants. So you need nectar plants for the butterflies to come in, and there's a whole list of them, and so we planted those around the area. we have native flowers in the pasture also, but we also made sure that they had more. So it's kind of both for the butterfly and then for the caterpillar that's going to turn into the next generation. And I don't know if you guys, just for kind of a brief talk about the way the monarch works, is when they're flying back from the south, like this time of year, they will start mating again, and there are, they live, I think, about 30 days, and they populate, and if they can't find this one, a certain type of plant, one of these plants, they will continue to fly because this is the only way that they can lay their eggs. And they will die, and that's what is happening. But what's fascinating that, if their cycle and everything works well, something goes off in the last generation of the year, which would be sometime in September, October, where they no longer mate. And so that generation of butterfly flies all that long way and roosts over the winter time, and then comes back and lays their first eggs and dies, and then it continues. So I didn't really realize how complicated it is. I always thought the butterfly, it was one generation that went back and forth, but it's not. But again, if they don't have the milkweed, they have no place to lay their eggs. As we were thinking about what we were going to do, again, we decided to do something that is considered kind of ephemeral in the way that it looks, or ethereal, where it blends in and uses materials that will reflect light. And the important thing that we wanted is one that would it would impede on the environment so that nobody would want to dig up and get people to come in and have a conversation, but we didn't want it to be harmful to the environment, wanted it to have sound and movement, and sort of be integrated where the natural wildlife, insects, or whatever, would not be threatened by it. So we came up with a bunch of concepts, and we did maquettes, which are little models to see how we wanted to do it. And then we started building these large pieces. And we picked scale of about 10 times life size. So one of my memories as a child was running through the prairie and the wheat when I was really, really little, and everything was taller than I, and butterflies would jump up around, and it was just a wonderful memory. And so that was kind of to recreate that, the joy of a child running and enjoying their surroundings. So we picked copper. The butterflies are made out of copper, and they are 10 times life size of a butterfly, and it's just kind of a very, what we call a drawing in space, and so that it really moves with the wind, and it feels, how you see butterflies, you only get kind of a glimpse of them. All the detail on there, that's just not something you get outside. So we wanted it to kind of have that feel. And we use copper in a particular reason to represent sort of the energy that, copper is used as a conductor in electricity, and sort of the energy of the civilization, that it has done good things, but also it has harmed the environment, and also the color that is present in the monarch. Then we decided that the grass, let's see where we are here. So those are the butterflies. And the grass stalks, we wanted them to kind of repeat the way prairie grass is. And they are made out of steel. And we picked that material again because that is one of the major materials that impacted the prairie when you think about the railroad coming through. And really changing, and the tractors and everything with agriculture. And so making something beautiful out of it, but it also has kind of that double message. So these are just some more pictures. Then the chair, and I don't know if we have, we decided that I didn't want to just have, the butterflies out in there, because I wanted there to be a conversation going on, that when you walked in there, one, childlike, enjoying Alice in Wonderland. I always loved Alice in Wonderland, and, thinking about going to a world where things are so much larger. But on a more serious note, the chair is woven out of steel again, and it is woven in a way, and that we did that all by heat and moving it and welding. It is to be kind of gnarly like that, so that it has an organic feel. But you can actually go up there and sit on it. It is 3 times life size. And the change in scale with the chair as well as the butterflies was chosen to create a very delightful, playful world, so that when you enter in and experience the prairie, you get directly involved and you don't just walk away. And I think that's what has happened with so many things in our environment, our special areas. We get so used to seeing them and things just happen to them, we don't even realize what delight there is. But with children, you take a child out there and they'll be stopping at everything, pulling this and that. We had quite a time planting the plants, because my grandson thought that maybe they ought to keep being moved around. So, it was kind of, wanted him to help, but also had to kind of get that across. The chairs were also designed to be somewhat imposing, but approachable, and they let's go back to the chair. They kind of represent the conversation. We sit on chairs. It's the most human. Anybody that looks at a chair knows that's a human item. And we sit on chairs to rest, to contemplate. And so there's kind of this double-edged thing. It is made out of steel, which is human-made, but it's also, the human overlooking and being, watching and maintaining and helping with the management of the prairie. And so that's kind of how that was. And these are just some close-ups with our grasses. And this was a beautiful day with a rainbow. So you can see they change a lot with what's happening with the season. So just going back, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but when I did a presentation for the faculty, this is just some processes of us working and developing these in my studio. So we hand twisted by heating all of those things up and doing all of that and working, and it was quite an adventure. And then moving them and getting them installed was certainly quite the thing. And that's installing them. And then my son, who is an artist also, came home because we were going to have a big opening. I wanted to have another piece in this that is totally ephemeral, which means that it will decompose over time. That's also very much in art right now, because there's a discussion is, some of the greatest art is God-made, the flower, and it's gone in 30 days or, 24 hours. And so there are artists that are making things that are gone in 24 hours or less or a couple of months. And so we wanted also to have that be as a conversation of that. So my son came home, and you can see we collected all these items from around and on the prairie. And so he designed, and with help of other artists, we made this very large chair, and it's 3 times the size of the other. You can kind of see the scale there. And that's my grandson there. And so it was a really fun day. We kind of made 2 structures. My son figured out, how to do this. I, being a farm girl, I have always loved how people get together and collaborate and finish, the harvest, and that was always some of my great memories. And so one of the reasons I guess I do these great big pieces is I love the collaboration that you have to have with other artists. And so we invited a group of friends and artists to put this whole piece together. So it was an event. It was a nice fall day, but it was like a barn raising because we needed everybody there, and you can see the ropes there, whether it's going to fall or not, and this is the first time we did anything like this, so there were moments where everybody was like, whoa, whoa, it's going to go. And meanwhile, my grandson was tired of all the commotion, and he was on the little tractor, and it was like he was having a great time. After it was all installed, and some of you I know were out there, I had an opening for the college in particular, and so that's just it was a beautiful day, and you can kind of see the scale. And I feel this is kind of the end slide, but I feel really successful in what I was doing. I've had people come out continually. It is an open place. You are always welcome to drive by. You can see it on the road. People have stopped, but usually, it's nice if you let me know. But when I walk with people going out there, the interaction that people have with the prairie is just amazing. It's exactly what I was hoping for. Some people have grown up on the country and haven't been back. It's like, oh my gosh, I remember this. I had this. I love this. And it's very childlike. People get very, very childlike and just really enjoy. I've had all kind of ages want their pictures taken on their chair. And so, that it is a art piece that is to delight and to encourage good stewardship with the prairie, and hopefully, stay there, so over generations, the legacy that I have with this property will stay. It is to impede. It's not, you could pull it out and take it away, but the purpose is to kind of focus on the prairie. And the art kind of moves around you, but, when you're in there, it's really the prairie that people are looking at. And the butterflies have been coming back more and more, so that seems like a good success. So that's kind of the end of my talk. I think I might have a couple more pictures, but yeah. Any questions at all?
Yeah, so I'm going to pass the microphone around. If people have questions, you can ask into the microphone. But before we do, I wonder if you can share with us where this is for those that want to take a drive and see it.
It's out. It's very close. If you know where the old Eden, the new Eden Church is, we're on 1678 Cheyenne Road. So it's very easy to find. I can give you some specific directions if you want, but that's the address, and you just go down, and our house is down there. So it's about 11 miles from McPherson.
We have some time, so please, if anyone has questions. And the microphone is to help benefit those that are watching on the video, so please take the microphone.
I have two questions, but I'll save the second one until other people ask. Do you expect that the metals are going to change colors?
They have. These pictures were taken when I first put it on, and yes, we did. We wanted it to change colors. The steel right now, you can see it has the coating that when you get steel, when you buy it, it's black. It has now rusted to where it stopped. You know, you don't feel any rusting. And so it is very much the color of what you would see, particularly in the fall. So we wanted that to do that. And you know, if it stood there for thousands of years, which, you know, I have no idea, it is a natural element, so it would just go back into the earth. So it would not impede. The copper, I'm debating on that. It also has changed patina. Copper is beautiful with changing patinas. It's getting very, very dark, and as I look at these pictures periodically, I think that I might want to go back and do some polishing up because I kind of like that difference. And we are going to have, you can put this on your calendar, but we are having another, we are in the process of making a whole nother series. And this is more for the birds and stuff that are migratory on the plains. And it will be the sandhill cranes that we are going to be putting out there. And they will be very large too, and they will be moving like they'll be flying, but they'll be moving with how the wind is going. And those will be ready and installed a year from September. From this coming September, and we will be having another opening and hopefully building another large installation, ephemeral piece, because the chair has since decomposed down. It was a great wind movement. We could tell which way the wind was going by how it went. It was like a sail, but it stayed up really good for about a year, and then over the next year, it started moving. And I wanted to always go back and make it, put it up, and my son, who is the artist for it, said, you can't do that. That's not what ephemeral art is. And so we had to let it go. But, okay.
What is the enemy of the prairie? Or enemies of the prairie?
Oh, there's so many enemies. You know, some of you guys are farmers and probably know more than I do. Overgrazing is one of them. Negligence is another one in this day and age because we have planted so many trees that a lot of prairie is just sitting there, and you probably have driven around where what is it? The red cedar is just, you know, taking over. And, you know, we've learned that over time. There was one area that was really hard for us to get to, and we, you know, kind of let our horses graze in there and didn't know quite, you know, we were learning, and we're really having to work to get some of the trees and the red cedars out because it will just populate. Now, I don't know, I think in the days before settlers were here, there were huge prairie fires and buffalo and stuff, so that really kept that down. In order to have a healthy prairie, from my understanding, we go to a lot of conferences and stuff, is you have to have kind of three things. You have to have stampeding, which is, you know, what the buffalo did. You have to have fire, and I'm not thinking about, there's one other thing. But those two things are very, very important, so you kind of have to figure out how to do that. And burning the prairie, to me, is the most frightful thing in the world, but that is one of the things to do. We have done it some. We hay periodically in order to keep it down, but this is not real far from our house. So as a little girl, my dad did burn the fields, and I do remember a couple times that we had to go out with gunny sacks and beat it down, and so I'm just like really nervous. But I think humans are probably one of the biggest dangers because they, you know, it's just like any other thing of land. Farmland can just be overused and not protected. So I don't know if that answered your question. Anybody else here want to add to that knows more about farming and pasture and grazing?
And you had quite a career at McPherson College. What were some of the highlights of your career since you're about to retire?
Oh, thank you. Probably one of the, well, first of all, it is a great place to work. And we have, I don't know, what is this, the 4th year that we've gotten an award for being in the Higher Chronicle as being one of the great places to work. And it really is. First of all, my colleagues are just fabulous and just wonderful place to work. I think one of my highlights was Wayne Conyers, which I think you might know. He, when that new building opened up and stuff, he hired Dee Irway Sherwood, she's a graphic design chair, and me. And so it was the 3 of us, and the program was very little. And so the 3 of us just like kind of incubated and figured out what was going to do, and now it's just really blossoming. And the thing that I feel really excited about is being part of that growth, that initial growth, and developing a photography program that wasn't there, that is now having artists, our students, taking international and national awards coming out of McPherson. So that is really, really exciting. We just had a student last week win first place in a national competition down in Dallas. So that's probably one of the big highlights is developing the photography thing that is really taken off, yeah.
And as I walk across the room, was most of the photography in your presentation your own?
Yeah,
or who?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Thank you. We lived in the Cedars Village for 10 years, and to me, the most delightful part of it, we had wonderful neighbors, but even more than that, we had a beautiful, from spring to fall, prairie area in back of our house. And we had wildlife living there. I agree with you. 10 years ago, there were more monarchs than there have been the last few years. But one of the plants that grew wild there was the milkweed. And I wondered, you talked about the milkweed that I saw growing there looked like the milkweed in your picture. Mm-hmm. But you talked about there were some harmful kinds.
They're not harmful ones. They are they grow down like in the warm states.
I see.
And so if you bring them up here, the butterfly, there's the milkweed dies here. What we have, it's a perennial, so it dies, when the butterfly should be moving on. So if you get those other milkweeds, they don't die. They're always there. So, it kind of messes up that whatever triggers them that it's time to move. And I can't tell, it's not that they're poisonous. Milkweed is poisonous, but to animals if they eat a large quantity. But yeah, the common milkweed is
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could get you to agree with me on something, and that is that every fall, that area is mowed down to nothing. And
Now,
and
you mean other prairie?
no, the prairie behind our.
Okay. I got you. Now go on. Yeah, I understand.
And the animals always lose their habitat when that happens. There are so many birds that live in there, and the ones that stay over the winter, I always hate to think they have no home left. Wouldn't it be healthy to let that grow year-round?
Well, the way, I don't have small prairies, so I'm sure, little plots. I'm sure that's a little bit different. But the way you manage a large prairie is you have to cycle things, and you do have to either burn it or mowing is not considered the best because it puts just thatch down, but haying or grazing, those 3 things. And the burning and the mowing or the haying you want to do that in summer. Well, the burning is early, like right now. People are burning right now, so the grass comes up. If you're going to hay, you have to do that no later than like the end of June. Otherwise, you're going to hurt over the year. There is some research on burning in the fall. So and then you cycle. You don't do this every year, and you always leave patches for exactly what you're saying, for the wildlife. So I think in a smaller area, I'm not sure why they would be mowing it down in the fall. But maybe if it's a big enough place, maybe certain areas could be left for the animals, because I think the fall is just beautiful with the grasses. They turn that gorgeous red and oranges and yellows, and they are a habitat for a lot of wildlife.
You still have a lot of energy and a lot of ideas, so you're going to do sandhill cranes next, and then I assume you have some other ideas. My second question is, how long did it take to convince Chip you ought to do this too, your husband?
Well, some of you know my husband, Chip. He is an architect, and we've been together for many, many years, and we've done a lot of projects together. And I knew I could not do this by myself, this scale. Part of it is structure, all that stuff, which he knows. So he is also a lover of the prairie, and particularly this farm area, because he grew up in a military family, and so they moved all over, and he never had a sense of place or home until he met me, and he just really treasures what this means to have this legacy. So, and he's very much into environmental issues. So it wasn't too hard. When we were working, though, there were times that it was like, it was in the summer when it was so hot and we had to wear those leathers. And there were moments that, as you all know that have been married, where you and your spouse, it's good other people weren't around us all the time, because there were some words that would fly.
Next project after Sandhill Crane?
I'm also working on, some of my other art, but we are doing an installation that will go with this. So we have a lot on our plate. Is the gallery down and we've been thinking about this for a long time and didn't really have a place to start. But the gallery in Lincoln, Kansas. She was, the owner there was really, really excited about it. And so she said, well, have my place be the place you experiment on it. We want to create a similar experience that can be taken on the road to places where nobody really gets a chance to understand what this is. And create it on a different scale, but it would be totally an environment where you walk in. There'll be some moving pictures of the prairie. My son is a musician, my other son, and he'll do all the sound. And there'll be chairs, one or two chairs, and then the butterflies and stuff. And there'll be changes that go like 24 hours in a short period of time, season-wise. And so that people can come in and really sort of get a sense of how important these areas are. And, my goal, whether that happens, all of you already have that experience that you can tap in, but there are people in the cities, in Chicago, New York, they have no idea. So that's kind of the long-range goal. Is I'd love to get this, travel around in some of the big cities and be able to, kind of pass this on. And we are hoping that there'll be, more and more people that might want to take a part of their property or their areas and figure out how they can preserve and maintain it and in this period of transition. So, who knows what's going to happen with global warming, whether the prairie will be able to sustain or not. But so that, yeah.
Oh, back.
this is an agricultural farming area. What kind of response are you getting from the area to this very creative process that you've developed?
I've gotten a lot of interesting things. My cousins, they really find it they love it. They find it very humorous, but they also are like, this is land, why aren't you using it? And so we have some really great discussions. I don't know if any of you know Richard Zerger. He used to teach at McPherson College. He's a chemist, and so we have some really great dialogues. Most of the farmers and people are really, they really are interested in what's going on. And I would say most farmers in this day and age that I know are really understanding, maybe not the corporate farmers, but, the farmers that are their own, the land has been in their family forever. They always loved the land, and I think they understand, things need to happen, and there's a lot happening in farming that I think is really exciting, particularly up at the Land Institute, how to create perennial grains. But I have to tell you a story. Is there's spraying that goes on, and I don't want that to happen on my field or on anywhere, because it kills some of the new plants, and then of course some of the insects and butterfly as they're down below. And it happens when the weeds are starting to come up. And we have this one plane that likes to just come down, and then our road is here, and on the other side is somebody's property that they can get going and start spraying. And so they like to come and undo their whatever, start the spraying right where we are so that they get a nice sweep. And so we've been doing some what I call passive resistance. Is if I'm home or if my husband's home, we always run out there and stand in his way because he will come really straight, and you can see him. I know he's very furious, and I have also called in and said, look, this isn't organic. Our farm is organic; it's all organic, and any kind of spray on there would. We do raise some organic crops, but so. It's mixed, and yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good question.
And you've intrigued people with what you do with your artwork. How do you help them to understand the microbes under the surface that make this possible? That's a really, really good question. There's all kind of ideas that we have to kind of create that. I do, it's not a micro, but I have created a large-scale caterpillar that is that I've been working on. So trying to bring, that focus, but. I don't know. I can't really answer that, but it is. That's the whole thing about the prairie is there are seeds that will not develop unless they've been burnt. And they can be dormant for, about 100 years or something. And so I know that, we have to burn this area, even though it's, and also trampling, and cows don't do the same as buffalo. And buffalo are really hard to keep. They're mean, they're not they're not mean, but they're unpredictable. So yeah, there are a lot of issues and a lot of holes in total management, but I think it's a beginning, and to try to save a little bit of what we have. And I'm not promoting in any way that all this wonderful farmland goes back to Prairie. It's just, we have to start managing, in my opinion, all our resources and understanding what the prairie offered, the environment, and how much was torn up before we even understood that. And so we have about 30 acres, I guess, that we do organic crop on it. So yeah, but not here.
Is that the water tower that we see on the edge of town?
No, that is a right over there, that's a street sign, I think. Are we looking at, I'm not sure what you're looking, are you looking at this here? No, that's a street sign. This is really close up. That's my street sign, 1678, that's Cheyenne Road. That's, it's kind of like, I don't like all those things that happen, but, that is good for people when the ambulance needs to get out there. You don't have to go, it's 2 miles this, where the Eden Church is, which is, how it used to be. So that's a benefit, but yeah.
Well, please join me in thanking Anne for coming and sharing all of this.
Thank you very much. And also, I just want to invite all of you at any time, you can, get my number really easy. And my business or my studio is Prairie Works Design, and we love to have people come out, and, it's just a delight. I love to have people come out and see. And maybe you guys will organize another trip out. That was really fun to have all of you guys out here, and I'll be glad to do that again. All right.
All right, thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next month in May for the writing project.